This is the City of Waupaca, third Tuesday of the month, City Council meeting.
Regular City Council meeting to order, and as always, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You'll have to pick me up.
All right, and we'll ask Sandy to read the clerk's open meeting statement for us.
This meeting and all meetings of the Common Council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the media in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes, so the citizens may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
And take roll for us too, Sandy.
Colin Dykstra.
Here.
Lori Chestnut.
Here.
Paul Hagan.
Here.
Henry Velliker.
Here.
Scott Perchatsky.
Here.
Dave Peterson.
Here.
Paul Mayo.
Here.
Dimitri Martin.
Here.
Mary Fair.
Here.
And Eric Olson is absent. 9 present, we have a quorum.
Hi, Henry. I know you're new at this, but I'm here too tonight.
Oh, Brian. Mayor Smith.
Here.
Good.
Let's go ahead and introduce staff, and Sandy, we'll start with you.
Sandy Sibbs, City Clerk.
Aaron Jensen, City Administrator.
Kathy Kaza, Finance Director. Sue Abrahamson, Intern, Library Director.
Jared Rakey, Community and Economic Development Director.
Stephanie Reif, Assistant Finance Director.
Justin Behrens, Director of Public Works. Andrew Whitman, Park and Rec Director.
Brian Hosell, Chief of Police.
Brian, do you want to go ahead and do the introduction right now, and then?
Sure, that's fine.
All right.
Sitting to my left is Officer Paul Jensen. He became a member of our department back in December of last year, and we sent him to recruit school where he was there for 720 hours of different scenario trainings that he completed. He graduated last Friday, May the 13th. Captain Helgeson and I attended his graduation. It was really neat, and we found out something very interesting that made us really proud. Paul received a class rank of number 1 out of 30. His overall percentage was 96.68%. I don't know if I ever got a test score that high when I was in college.
No, I haven't.
But, you know, I'm really proud that Paul's a member of our department, and it's really great to see someone that we hired finish the top of the class.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Well, congratulations, Paul.
he said he's willing to say a few words.
Absolutely. Go ahead. He should probably stand up so we can see him there.
Yeah, like you said, I am Paul Jensen. I grew up here in the community of Waupaca, just south of town. So I'm really excited. As an officer, one of the big things that was important to me was to be part of a community, the chance to interact with different people and build those relationships. You have that, I think, that opportunity in a lot of law enforcement, but I thought specifically with the city of Waupaca being a smaller town, I really thought that was what I was interested in for my career. I'm really thankful for the Waupaca Police Department. I didn't have any previous law enforcement schooling or anything, and them being willing to sponsor and put me through the academy was really helpful to me. So I wanted to thank them for that.
Well, thanks, Paul. Welcome. All right, let's go into the agendas. We have the consent agenda. This is where we make one motion and vote on all of those items that are in the consent agenda unless we'd like to see any of those items moved to the regular agenda. Anybody like to see any of those items moved to the regular agenda? If not, we'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as printed.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Chestnut, second by Hagan, that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Motion carried. Under the regular agenda, Sandy tells me that the agenda is as printed, so we would be, again, looking for a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Peterson, second by Chestnut, that we approve the regular agenda as printed. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Mary. Motion carried. Under non-agenda items and announcements, this is National Public Works, and we have a proclamation. Justin, are you okay saying a few words and also reading that proclamation for us?
You want me to read the whole thing?
You read what you want to read.
I'll skip the reading. It's in the packet. Everyone can read it, including the public. It's on page 65. But being National Public Works Week, we try to bring a little more recognition to the community of all the things we do every day, our blood, sweat, and tears into various programs such as clean streets, sewers, and waters, and a commitment to public safety and the welfare of this community. So we kind of just pat ourselves on the back for 1 week out of the year. We usually do a few educational programs, and we're going to do one more year of not going to the schools this year. However, we're going to pick that up again next year, all things, if they go right. We are still going to plan our picnic, which everyone is on council and staff are invited to next Tuesday. But this time we'll be at our newer building, which is right next to the rec center, the 415 School Street building, which is an older building, but we just moved into that, so.
All right. Well, Justin, congratulations on the National Public Works Week, and hope you guys all have a great week.
What time is that?
I'll start around 11:30.
Okay, next up, we have public input. This is for non-agenda items. If there's anybody who would like to speak to council on a non-agenda item, please step up to the podium, give your name and address for the record, and limit your time at the podium to 3 minutes or less. Seeing none, we'll move on to the community department head reports, and I see we have Tracy Barrett, who's going to be talking about the Historical Society tonight.
I am. Well, thank you very much for including an update. This is actually with the Waupaca Area Arts and Culture Network, which we have been a part of since the beginning. And like Mayor Smith said, I'm Tracy Barrett, and I'm the director at the Waupaca Historical Society. And we want to first say thank you so much for your support of both the society and the network. The Historical Society has been a part of the network since the beginning and sees the network as a great way to partner with other arts and cultural organizations while enriching our community. I'm here tonight to provide you with a quick look at what the Historical Society has been doing and what we are planning on doing this summer. The Historical Society works closely with not only the community and arts and cultural organizations, but also the city of Waupaca and the library. We are incredibly thankful for the city's continued support of the Waupaca Historical Society and our mission to preserve the city's history. The Historical Society recently launched our first capital campaign in anticipation of our 70th anniversary next year. We hope to raise $400,000 to fund a variety of projects at each of our 4 sites to not only preserve our buildings and our collections, but also to become a greater community resource and build for the future. Our first project, a new roof on the Holly Center, just finished thanks to donations and a grant from the city's building repair program. We also received a facade enhancement grant to install a new sign at the Holly Center, which will go up actually next week. Other capital campaign projects will include a hearing loop in the lower level of the Holly Center, a new HVAC system at the Hutchison House Museum, the digitizing of collections, and hopefully an additional part-time staff person at the Holly Center. The Waupaca Historical Society also has continued to offer monthly historical programs, with our next one this Thursday at 6 on early pioneers to Wisconsin. These monthly programs are free to the public and cover both local and state historical topics. In the last month, we've also partnered with the Waupaca Area Public Library for our second annual potato growing event, and that was at the Hutchison House. And then we also partnered with Winchester Academy for a program on player pianos for its Roots of Jazz event. Looking ahead to this summer, we are looking forward to opening our buildings, both by appointment and for open hours. The Hutchison House Museum in South Park and the Depot on Oak Street will be open for events and 2 weekends each month, June through August. At the Hutchison House, we will be hosting our first annual Lost Arts event featuring demonstrations of vintage arts and crafts, live music, children's activities, and food. This event is Saturday, June 25th from 10 to 4 and is supported by a grant we just received from the Waupaca Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. Through all these efforts, the Waupaca Historical Society works to preserve the history of Waupaca and the chain of lakes and share this history with others. We continue to grow our collections and make them accessible to the community and our visitors. We offer free programs and events throughout the year that are family-friendly and community-minded. We partner with community organizations and work together to reach new audiences. And perhaps most importantly, we strive to increase people's sense of community and belonging through our shared history and love for Waupaca and the chain of lakes. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this update on the Historical Society and the Waupaca Area Arts and Culture Network. And thank you again for your support of the Historical Society's mission and in showing our community the importance of preserving Waupaca's history.
Tracy, thank you for coming tonight. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Tracy? Yeah, go ahead, Colin.
Thank you for your work. Today, randomly, I was walking at the Shambo Park and noticed all the signs had been replaced. I noticed last year that they needed to be replaced, and now they are. And I assume that you guys did that, or maybe Parks and Rec.
That would be Parks and Rec, but the Historical Society, we have 4 properties, but 3 main locations. And one of the first things we identified in our capital campaign was the fact that not everybody knows that we have all those 3 properties, that they're all through the Historical Society. So all 3 locations will get brand new signs this year. Holly Center and the Hutchison House are first at the end of next week, and then the Depot will follow probably late summer, early fall.
The signs at Shambo were quite historic, so I thought did a well job to everybody who was involved.
That's wonderful. Thanks.
All right, anybody else? Tracy, again, thank you.
Thank you.
Normally, we have the department head reports. Those reports are in your packet tonight. We've chosen to allow you to read those. And if you have any questions for staff, feel free to contact them in the future, or later on. But we're going to just move on with the agenda. We feel like it's a fairly long agenda tonight, and we want to make sure that we get through everything with everybody paying attention, for better terms. So we're gonna go right to new business. We have a request from the Waupaca Area Convention and Visitors Bureau for requests for street closures for Strawberry Fest, June 17th through the 18th, and July 4th celebration. And this request is coming from Mitchell Swenson, who is the VP of Tourism for Waupaca Area Chamber of Commerce and Convention Visitors Bureau. I'll put that on a business card. I don't see Mitchell here tonight, but as far as I know, it's unchanged. Aaron?
Yeah, correct, Mayor Smith. So in your packet, Council, you will see a memo on page 66. So it's put together by Mitch and the Chamber. Strawberry Fest is unchanged from last year, so it's going back to by Trinity Lutheran Church. You can see the request for closures of Jefferson Street to Badger Street to Deer Street, and then the entire length of Deer Street for through traffic. Closure of Division Street from Badger Street to Deer Street for through traffic. I actually was at this event last year. I know there was very minor things with cars coming in and out of the closed areas, but they were able to circulate through. It worked out pretty well. So that's the same as last year. And then 4th of July celebration is, last year, if you remember, it was on Churchill Street because of the reconstruction, moving back to the Main Street area. So same as every other year except last year. So that's kind of that's the request from the Chamber.
All right, so basically they're requesting some road closures, so we just need a motion to approve that.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Chestnut, second by Hagan, that we approve the request from the Chamber of Commerce. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Motion carried. Jared, I know this isn't exactly on the agenda here, but can you just talk about the city's participation in the Strawberry Fest and what we have planned?
Yeah, happy to. So kind of some odd timing last year. We were looking to do a Main Street ribbon cutting, kind of a big celebration with the Halloween on Main celebration. With some delays in the streetlights, some other items that just weren't quite finished up by that time. We didn't really get to have that full effect, that grand ribbon cutting kind of ceremony, thanking our donors. So to ensure that we thank those and everyone that was included, it's a big project, a historical project for the city. So we did want to make sure we had a proper ribbon cutting, proper ceremony for those donors, and just a big thank you to the city. So the city is planning to pair with Strawberry Fest and do a short ribbon cutting out on the main lawn area, kind of right on downtown main square here. That would include some speeches, again, thanking donors, just, again, recognition for the project. Again, historical project, so we really want to make sure we put the cherry on top and make sure we finish it right.
Strawberry on top.
Strawberry on top. Good catch. Good catch. So plan is to have a ribbon cutting at 10 a.m. on Saturday, the day of Strawberry Fest. We'll be sending out invites via email, some via mail if needed, for this event. Just trying to welcome all the businesses, all the donors, elected officials, everyone that was involved. We'll try to make sure that they can be there if they would like and be recognized for all their work in the project. So,
All right, thanks, Jared. Anybody have any questions on that? I think it would be great if we had some participation there. If you are in town that weekend, we'd certainly appreciate that you would attend that. Again, it will be on City Square at 10 a.m. All right, next up, we have the zoning change for the Godfrey Drive properties. And Jared, I'll just let you explain this. This is actually an ordinance, so it's just the first reading tonight, but we'll have Jared go ahead and explain.
thank you very much, Mayor. This starts on page 67 of your packet. There's an exhibit that kind of lays out the different properties involved on page 68 of your packet. So this is a group rezone. After kind of prepping for the River North new neighborhood area that the city's working towards, it was realized that a lot of the parcels surrounding the new neighborhood area were improperly zoned. This is a negative for the businesses involved as well as the city, just to have the improperly zoned lots. So we were looking to go through and take an initiative to ensure we get those changed, get those kind of prepped for the new neighborhood, as well as just make sure it's all in line for the businesses and they don't have any issues going forward in the future. So doing it in batches, this is the first batch. We hope to have a second batch come through. The batches is just a little bit more efficient. We don't have to have multiple public hearings, saves on mailing. So with the city taking initiative, the batching just helps to save time and money. But properties involved, so all the properties involved in this one are on Godfrey Drive. They involve the two lots on the corner of Godfrey and Highway 22 that the city actually owns. Those are used for the trailhead parking into the natural area to the south of these properties. The next property owner is, I guess I'll say the ABC Computers building. It is just a set of offices, very nice building. Rezoning them to B4 to match the future land use map. The next property owner is a vacant parcel owned by the city. Kind of continuing down to the west or over to the left on your screen. The next parcel is Spine and Sport Therapy. The next one is a trail owned by the city, and then the next one is Sunny Day Childcare. So how we wanted to approach this, we did go out, we did create the staff reports, kind of detail as much information as we can. We went to each property owner, educated them on both the River North project, as well as what we're looking to do with zoning. So we wanted to make sure they were fully in the loop with what was going on. After explaining to them, gave them time, make sure we answered any questions, and then when they felt ready, we did ask for a signature. So they did sign the staff report, the city and the property owner signed the staff report. Each of those staff reports are separate and in the packet. They kind of go through after page 68, that exhibit for the ordinance. Again, each property was aware, is aware. They were sent these, the packet notification, just as if they were kind of taking all this on themselves. So try to be as upfront and transparent as we could with them to make sure, everything was going to remain kosher through this process. But yeah, the two parcels in the end were switching to resource conservation. The one office building was switching to B4, kind of a heavier commercial. And then the rest of the parcels were switching to B3, which would be in line with the neighborhood mixed use. So just trying to stay right in line with our future land use map as well. But with that, I would be happy to take any questions. This is the first reading. During the public hearing at the Plan Commission, there were no comments.
All right, Garrett, Colin has a question.
Yes.
The trailhead between Sunny Day, why not put that as a park as it feeds into the park, the resource conservation?
So certainly an option. With it being such a small parcel, I guess it doesn't have too much of an impact. With it being set as neighborhood mixed use on our future land use map, we would have to have gone through a comprehensive plan amendment. So just trying to make it easy on the process and switch it in line with the remainder of those parcels. I guess there is always an opportunity, as we do look at developing this area as well, that it may not always be that select trail. It could always move off to the left. There's obviously no discussion of ever moving that. But with it being that trail, there wasn't much of a difference if it was zoned the B3 or the resource conservation, which would be the park. So just keeping it in line with the future land use map and cutting down on one of the steps in the process.
All right, any other questions on that ordinance? All right, next up, we have a zoning change, and this is also a first reading for the Waupaca Historical Society. Garrett?
Thank you very much, Mayor. So this ordinance starts on page 142 of your packet. Ordinance 1222 is for the Historical Society Train Depot. So as Tracy was just up mentioning about the signage, this did come to be when they wanted to put signage on this property. Back in 2007, I believe, or somewhere around that date, the Historical Society did come forward and rezone this property. I don't remember what from, but they rezoned it to R1, which is single family residential. Not an issue at all, as the R1 district did accommodate their land use. The issue arose when they came to put a sign on it. The typical kind of commercial style sign that they wanted to put out, the ground sign, to indicate that this is part of the Historical Society, part of their branding. It was not in compliance with the single family sign requirements. The sign requirements state that it can only be so big of a sign. So to be able to accommodate what sign they're looking for, staff talked it through with them and came to the conclusion that it would be best to rezone this property to a commercial property in order to have the proper signage and to still allow the proper land use. So just kind of going through this process and kind of move them from R1 to B3, which is in line with our future land use map. which would allow them to continue their land use as well as obtain the sign that they are looking to have. Happy to take any questions if there are any. Similar to the last, there was a public hearing at Plan Commission for this one as well. No comments on it.
All right. Garrett, again, thank you for looking through all these things and getting them up to date. And that was the first reading, so we'll move on then to a conditional use permit for Clintonville Lumber, their warehouse on 1999 Spent Drive. And Jarrett, you're still up.
Thank you, Mayor. So this one starts on page 151 of your packet. So this one is more of a cleanup. So as we had switched our zoning code, and actually per state code adoptions, we switched from a special use permit to a conditional use permit, which essentially a special use is a conditional use now. But the conditional use does have more restrictive requirements. So even though Clintonville Lumber had that special use in the past, since they are looking to, and there's a site plan permit that is approved contingent on the approval of this conditional use permit. But since they were coming forward with that, we needed to look to update, make sure they have the proper conditional use in place for their outdoor storage. So coming through for this conditional use for outdoor storage, again, this is a use that they have been utilizing on the property for quite some time, but more of a cleanup to make sure we have everything kosher moving forward. Again, they do have a site plan permit that is approved contingent on the approval of this conditional use permit. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
All right, we are looking for a motion to approve this conditional use permit at tonight's meeting.
I'd make that in the form of a motion.
Second. Motion by Hagan, second by Veliker, that we approve the conditional use permit for Clintonville Lumber Incorporated, 1999 Spent Drive. Any further discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Mary Fair.
Aye.
Paul Hagan.
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
Dimitri Martin.
Aye.
Colin Dykstra.
Aye.
Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
Dave Peterson.
Aye.
Henry Veliker.
Aye.
And Paul Mayo.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
All right, Jarrett, thank you. Let's move on to resolution number 1510. This is a resolution dealing with the Tif District number 8. And Aaron, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. So in your packet, council members, page 177 is the start of this resolution. Again, Mayor Smith, as you mentioned, this is the amendment to TID number 8 and the project plan for that. And what we're looking to do is amend the boundaries as we're looking to create TID number 11 to cover the entire development area for the River North project area. While I kind of get to the beginning of this project, I'm going to ask Mark. Mark from R.W. Baird is here. He's going to just step to the podium and assist as we get into all of these resolutions, the next couple. Mark, thanks for coming.
Not a problem.
Mark and Brian and Justin, all from R.W. Baird, have helped us through this process, as well as Kathy, and it's been a team effort here. So as we get into the project plan description, so you can see introduction and description of the project plan amendment 2. This is the second amendment to TID number 8. I'm on page 183 if you're looking to follow along. It just kind of gives the history and the background of the TID. The district was created, was 23 years with a termination date of June 19th, 2024. There's been amendments right now, as we talked about in our TID 101 presentation last time. We're looking at about 2032 for the closure of this TID, and that is because we're looking to pay back all of the debt through TID 4, which is a current donor TID to this district. Let's see, we're going to go back this one. I'm going to pull up this map is a little tough to see when you get into page 185. It's hard to tell because actually what we're looking to remove from TID 8 and amend the boundaries on, there were different parcels at the time it was created. Now we have separate parcels. So I'm going to show you this map that's probably a little easier to see. So if you look up on your screen, you can see the brown is TID 8, and where we have these hash marks through those parcels, that is what is getting removed from TID 8. Much of that is currently city-owned or nonprofit-owned along the river, and there isn't value there, and there's not increment being generated towards TID 8 and helping pay off that debt. You'll notice that there are no hash marks in the kind of smack in the middle of those hash marks. That would be the ABC computer building. That was strategically left in because that was a project as a result of TID 8 years ago, and that is generating increment that can help continue to pay off that debt until 2032. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. Again, that's TID 8. So really, as we go through the rest of this plan, and there's not as many details in this plan as the next two that we'll talk about, I think the important points to note here are that TID 8 and the boundary amendments are not going to impact that end payoff period, as we've worked with Baird to determine that, and Kathy. And that's what we were trying to accomplish. We didn't want to take parcels out that were going to push it from 2032 to 2034. So everything looks the same. It just allows us to include those parcels in TID 11, which we'll get to in a second. You'll notice that the city attorney opinion is not in this yet. He is working on that. Steve Sorensen's working on that for us, as he is for TID 11 and TID 12. Really, as we go through this process, that just needs to be in there at the time of filing with the Department of Revenue. Of course, that happens after final approval is given by the Joint Review Board. So that will all be in there, assuming those go forward. So I think that's an overview, Mayor Smith, of what we're looking to accomplish with the resolution for the TID number 8 territory amendment. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Colin, go ahead.
It's my understanding that a TID has to be contiguous, and in this case, you have an island. Do we have to include basically the park area we were just talking about to make this work?
Good question, Colin. So I'm going to zoom into this again. So it's kind of a reverse island is what it is. So it has to be touching other properties within the TID. So if this ABC Computers was taken out and let's say placed over here where Centerline Machine is, that would not be allowed. But since the others are touching other parts of that TID, it is allowed.
So I guess what I'm saying is the ABC Computers, that's not being removed from TID 8.
It is not being removed.
And what we're looking at,
oh yeah, you're right.
It will not touch TID 8 anymore. And so
you're completely right.
That's my point of the question.
Mark, how did we figure that was allowed?
So I believe that was the deletion creation that we'll see in part 11.
Okay, but that's still not going to be, that brings this parcel here along the river, that's going to be separated from ABC Computers, which will no longer allow it to be in TID 8.
I believe that may be part of that half-mile radius for the for performing extra increment to be generated in that half-mile radius of those areas. I would have to go look back at the plans and make sure that that is correct, but from what I recall, we have the deletion here and the creation, and it would make that that full connection.
I think just to go back to what you said earlier, Colin, the idea of leaving, I think you're right. This might even, let me go back to this. You're right. What your comment was about leaving this in TID 8, that would solve it, and it does us no good in TID 11.
Right. Do you need a motion to include it? I'd certainly be willing to put that motion in.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that maybe this map that's not in the project plan maybe is not accurate. So let me go to the map within the project plan, which also shows that part being removed. So yeah, you're 100% right. That would have to be amended to not include that parcel from the territory subtraction. And then that would keep it contiguous.
So go back to the map and show us what you're talking about then, Aaron.
So this just, it says, I'm going to blow this up a little bit. So this parcel here is currently, it's not a taxable, there's no value associated with this parcel. So this would be not removed as a part of the TID 8 boundary amendment. This would stay. So basically what you'd see is this would remain in TID 8, this would remain in TID 8 as shown on here. And
So the part where the river goes through, where you see the X's, should not be removed from TID 8. It should stay in TID 8 is what you're saying.
that's exactly what I'm saying, yes.
All right. So when you are approving this resolution, you're approving this resolution with that change on the map that includes that parcel that we're talking about, that where the river goes through, will still be part of TID number 8, and we'll get that map fixed. Colin, thank you for finding that.
Yes, thank you,
For us.
Colin.
But again, it doesn't affect anything because it had no tax base. Go ahead.
Solve that problem, could you, over the eastern part of that, part of the part south of, could you just take just a sliver and connect the two together, because the other side is already connected to?
Yeah. Yeah,
Kathy's.
You would have to create a separate parcel to do that. So this is all one parcel, so you wouldn't want to do that.
The best of ideas is shot down by facts.
You were waiting to say that, weren't you? Well, it does seem like it's a pretty easy cleanup, but we want to make sure we're doing it the right way here. So everybody understands what we're trying to do here by removing certain properties from TID 8, and the properties that we're including in TID 8. I hope everybody has a full understanding. Okay, so we'd be looking for a motion to approve Resolution 1510, which is amending the boundaries of TID number 8.
So move with the amendments.
Motion by Chestnut,
Second.
second by Prochatsky, that we approve resolution number 1510. It's a resolution approving project plan amendment 2 for TID number 8 in the city of Waupaca. Any discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Henry Velker,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Colin Dykstra,
Aye.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Scott Prochatsky,
Aye.
Dimitri Martin,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
and Paul Hagan.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
All right, next up is establishing this is a resolution number 1511, and this will establish the boundaries for new TID number 11.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. So this resolution starts on page 193 of your packet. Going to scroll to the project plan. Project plan starts on page 196. Again, this is not an amendment. It is would be the creation or a proposed creation of TID number 11, which would cover the River North area. Just going to get an introduction and description of the district. That starts on page 199. This is a mixed-use TIF district. We talked about the different types of districts at our last meeting. That would mean that it has a 20-year life expectancy, assuming no extensions, and it has a 15-year expenditure period. This is being done to primarily promote residential, although it also does promote and can approve commercial properties as well. But this was in large part due to the comp plan meetings that we had. and the need for housing when we met with community partners, including large employers, small employers, the Chamber of Commerce, elected officials, school district, and this is a tool to help kind of serve that greatest need. The city anticipates various public improvement project cost expenditures, approximately 14.1 million or just over that during the 15-year expenditure period. You can see right below that, as a result, we're looking to generate approximately 88.7 million. That would be the value created in the TID by the end of 2031 if projects go as planned. Of course, you know, those are going to be numbers that we keep an eye on and we look at as a reference as we enter into potential development agreements and as we look to execute Area 1, Area 2, Area 3. This is for our pro forma sake and something that R.W. Baird was working off of. As everyone knows, this is, again, we have site control of approximately 80 acres, which is another one of the reasons that we felt like this is one of the probably the best tools and the best areas that we can produce that housing need. Just some interesting stats there at the bottom. The city of Waupaca has 5,872 jobs compared to 3,019 housing units. That's a ratio of 1.95 jobs per housing unit. And that is, I was just in a presentation, an economic development presentation a couple months ago. That's the highest ratio by far of the 15 different communities that were highlighted. And the higher the ratio, kind of the worse from a housing stock and inventory standpoint. I think the next highest was like 1.45 or something. So again, TIF 11 would aim to assist with that. Summary of findings, this is something you've heard us talk about in the past too. When you're looking at creating a TID, that but-for question, would the development occur at all? Would it occur at the pace or the timeline desired? All of those questions, we believe, as staff and working through developers that have had interest in housing type projects in this area in the past and gotten to the point where they've gone elsewhere and that we don't get that extra housing because it doesn't work. It doesn't happen. So we do firmly believe that it meets the but-for tests for this project. Through here. Just a couple important things that we have to stay under the equalized value of the 12%. Again, we closed the 3 TIDs as we talked about 2 weeks ago, and that got us underneath the 12% of the equalized value of taxable property, and that's gives us the opportunity to have this conversation with TID 11 and TID 12. It does meet that test, and that does account for TID 12, which we haven't talked about yet, but it accounts for both. Another interesting thing with a mixed-use TID, each TID has different types of requirements maybe than others, and a mixed-use TID does require that the land that's going to be newly platted residential does not exceed 35% of the area of that TID. So when you look at the boundary, you'll see that it's bigger than the River North area, and that is because that area can't exceed that 35%. So we did have to grab some extra geographical area to meet the intent of the mixed-use TID. There you'll see the map, and here, Colin, is this is where my reverse island theory comes into play. We did exclude some of these properties, again, higher value properties that we just didn't need, and we don't feel like they're developed. We don't feel like there's a lot of potential for future development and grabbing future increment on those properties. Again, there's a half-mile radius on page 204 where you could expend dollars and increment if you felt like there was a need to. We haven't seen or talked about the need for that at this point. Required future existing uses and conditions, map in there on that. And then on page 206, preliminary parcel list and analysis. This just shows all of the parcels that are included. It shows the value, both the land and the improvements, generating that 9.651 million. More on the equalized value test. And then when it gets to statement of kind, number, and location of proposed projects, you'll just see kind of some estimates on what maybe that investment will need to be out of this TID. And these are estimates, I will reiterate, for the different phases. So we all already know that Area 1 multifamily, we have a number in there, 650,000. Area 2, that would be more substantial, as we talked about. That Area 1 is going to be less substantial because of the need for the public infrastructure that would be in Area 2, which would be streets, sewer, water, so on and so forth. So as you can see, as we go to 2, 3, 4, 5, the numbers fluctuate depending on what may be needed from that public infrastructure standpoint. I'm gonna just talk to number 8 for just a second. Actually, I'm gonna kick it to you, Kathy, for this. So we can charge off some of our administrative and organizational fees. Just a reminder. Do you want to give a reminder on what that goes towards and why we came up with the number we did for TID 11 and why that's higher than TID 12?
Well, usually what involves is a lot of staff time in maintaining the Tif District as far as working with the developers. And so there is a charge back to the general fund of the staff time as an administrative charge. So community development, a little bit of the city administrator, finance to do all the reporting, especially if we're going to go into any bond issues and that. So there is relatively about, I think we did what, 15 or 1,200 or 12,500
Let's see here. It was,
per year.
yeah, whatever that divided by 30.
Some
is.
of it's right now, like TIF 3 was providing the general fund about $37,000 worth of staff costs. So we're looking at a lot of the stuff that we'll have to do with the development agreements. So that's.
Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, so that's $15,000 per year that goes from the TID to the general fund to help pay for staff support and the work that's happening there. Economic feasibility. I'm going to get into the Baird portion of it. And here there's just a list of different ways you can finance some of these costs. Probably not likely to use all of these ways, but if you don't have it in the plan, you can't have a conversation around it, and then you got to go through a plan amendment, and just to not handcuff us, we did include all of those that you see listed. I'm going to hand it over to you, Mark, to go through the pro forma, which is listed here on page 217. Go ahead.
All right, so what we can see here in the green, we can start up on the top left there. This is our base value of about $9.651 million. That's the assessed value currently at the beginning of the TID. We can slowly work our way down to the Tif District Valuation, and that will be based off of the construction increment and how that will be added in to the bottom number where we'll see the $88.7 million. So that'll be the new taxability of this area. So you'll be adding that amount to your tax rolls. The tax revenue, as you can see in the blue revenues at the bottom, you'll see the 33.1 million about. So that'll be the taxing revenue that will be coming in on the tax rolls for the TID pay itself. Expenditures, kind of as we outlined here, as Aaron did, principal and interest for the loans themselves, just for issuance, and the existing debt service. So those are really just summing together to show you the existing debt service. We can see the pay-go, as we kind of saw the types of financing structures as part of the plan itself. We're looking at a pay-go for the construction portion of it. As we saw in column M, we are budgeting budgeting $15,000 a year for admin expenses, And then we can come down to the $14 million per the life of the TID for the combined expenditures. Really, then going to the TID status in the orange, we're just really kind of pulling through all of these numbers to see the revenues versus expenditures. And we can see at 2035 that this TID will essentially cash for, or the expenditures will be recovered.
Okay, any questions or anything to add, Kathy?
I'm sorry if I probably should have picked up on this a little earlier too, but if you look in the expenditures under the pay-go, and this is what's being paid out to the developer, why in, what is it, 2041, it's a negative number there?
That would probably just pulling over from the total revenues to expenditures would probably just be the, if you have a negative expenditure, you get a positive. So it's most likely just pulling over from the subsequent years and the rolling down of the pay growth to the the TID as itself.
All right, so that number should not be a negative number, but it should, if it is, it should be in a different column, is what you're telling me?
Yeah, I can see how that works into the pro forma, and we
Sure.
can adjust that.
I mean, it's way out there, so we're more worried about the first, 10 years or so of this, but let's get that in the proper column.
Okay, moving on to, we talked about the city attorney opinions. Those are worked on right now, as well as the legal descriptions. This one's quite the project for a legal description standpoint. Again, that'll just be added as soon as we're ready to submit the files to the DOR if we get to that point. So that's kind of a summary of the TID number 11 for the River North area. I'd be happy to open it up to questions for those who have it.
Go ahead, Dimitri.
So the present base value of the property is $9,651,900, and how much of that is generating taxes? Because some of that is owned by the city, and it, right, is not generating taxes presently. What portion of that is? Do you know?
Well, if there is no, all 9 million would be generating taxes because any of the city property is valued at 0.
Yeah, if you, Dimitri, if you look at the list on, what page is it, real quick?
It's on page 206.
206, you'll notice that the city of Waupaca, anything that's owned by the city of Waupaca has a 0 value for land and improvements and personal property. So the only thing that you're seeing is the taxable assets.
So that taxable amount right now, based on the current tax rate of $22.67 per thousand, if I do the math, it comes to $218,788. Does that sound correct?
I'd have to do it, but that.
Where are we going with this? I'm sorry,
Well,
I'm missing.
I'm thinking those are tax revenue that the city is presently collecting, and that's going to pay off the levy. That tax revenue is not going to be collected and applied to the levy anymore, and so.
No, that's not true.
That's not true.
So
that's the amount that will go.
That 9 million still stays in. So the TIF increment is based on any new value. So the 9 million will stay as if it was still on the tax rolls.
Okay.
So the TIF district is only when new value gets created, does that value stay within the TIDs? okay?
Yeah,
Actually, what a
that's
great
really helpful to
question,
know.
though, because that's a great question that needed to be answered. So I'm glad you asked it.
Yeah, that makes a world of difference.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
Yeah,
from
we're
the
not losing
standpoint-
9 million. So that 9 million did come back into the tax roll when we closed TID 3. So now we're in essence now grabbing it again. So if those values did increase on those properties, that will become an increment.
I understand now. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's a lot better from the standpoint of a
So,
of a
yeah,
taxpayer.
The easy answer to that, of course, is if we just round that to $10 million, is the TIF only gets to keep what's greater than that $10 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And then one other question, as I understand it, the joint review board has to approve this before it comes to the council. Is that correct?
Yes.
So this is the council action on the resolutions to create it. The joint review board is the final action.
Oh, okay, got it.
And then
Which you are a member of.
Yes, yeah, and we had a meeting on the 10th, and on page 196, it said that it was approved on May 10th by the joint review board, but that meeting was canceled.
Yeah, there's some timeline changes that happen. So when this gets filed, we'll just update that timeline on the cover pages.
Yeah.
That would show the process.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you remember, we canceled that meeting because we did not have a representative from the county yet appointed. That's why we're waiting to make sure we have a county rep, which we found out we do have now. And we're gonna approve him tonight, actually. So, good point, though. If somebody's looking at this, they'll have to understand that we did cancel that meeting, and we're gonna have another meeting. Are you done, Dimitri? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
thank you.
Okay, Paul.
In expenditures under column I, pay-go payment to developer, in 2029 is the first payment of $455,150. Is that under the assumption that development has happened and we are reimbursing the developer or for tax credits, so that it's truly pay-as-you-go?
Yes.
Is that what we're doing with that?
Yes.
Correct.
Exactly.
So there's a certain number of somewhere in which is assumed that there's an amount of development that has already happened by that time.
That is correct.
Yep. Anybody else? Henry, go ahead.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. In column C, this is really probably a question from ignorance. We must have a development in the works for that increment level in 2023.
That's correct. We've
Okay.
gotten some preliminary estimates on what that value may be.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, Colin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to pony off of that. We had a meeting with the developer a while back. I asked about the what you call Area 1, and they ballparked it as a $20 million investment. And I assume that's the first increment you're talking about there. But then the next ones, what are those chunks? What are those ideas? What are I would think that if you're building housing, it wouldn't be 20 million at a crack. It'd be smooth.
Yeah, that would be based off of, so if you, Area 2, they're rough estimates to answer that, but Area 2 also has that multi-family component, so big value piece in there, and then with the assumption that some single family would also happen. Yeah, I would agree. I think you could probably have that be smoothed out. I mean, in 2000, so let's say Area 1 gets done, or Area 2, I'm sorry, and we have that infrastructure put in, and maybe we have a large multifamily done, and maybe that's 15 to 20 million with some other homes, and that equals that 21 million. It's probably likely that we have some more homes go in that next year, so it probably wouldn't be zero. I think the idea in that construction increment is to capture really all the value we expect if it were to get built out as we're planned. So I think you could probably shift those numbers a lot within those different years. But yeah, good question.
Go ahead, Kat.
These are also estimates for just the plan. And so as you know from our other TIF presentations, these numbers get updated on a yearly basis. So this is just trying to just show the potential development dollars and how it's going to be able to fund in going forward.
Understood.
Yeah, the cool part, if you remember about this, well, the cool part that I see about this TID is that the first project that we're going to do in there is going to be a very large project. And so it will instantly bring increment to the TID so that we'll be able to use that money to pay for infrastructure in the other areas within there. So the idea is that we'll have to hopefully borrow less money to cover the infrastructure for the new areas because of that increment with that first large project. Okay, Colin, you still got it?
While we're looking at this page, the expenditures recovered in 2035. At that point, is it the maximum life of this TID would be 20 years, but at that point, once your expenditures are recovered, is it an appropriate point to close it? And is that something we would plan to do?
That's it. We just talked a little bit about this today.
The best plan would be that we do, everything does fall into place and you have that expenditure period. The only other way that you would have is if it didn't come to fruition and it takes a little bit longer. Otherwise, yes, we would close those TIDs.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have to have a reason to keep it open once we're at full amount, so. The easy answer would be.
The other thing would be is you were keeping it open, you couldn't call those bonds. So depending on how the bonds are structured, there might be that you have to keep it open before you can call it. But we would make sure that, depending on when we borrowed, when the call dates would be, so that if there was potential to close that TID, you could call those bonds with the increment that you've received and close it.
Okay, anybody else have any comments or questions? And again, a couple of points that got brought up as questions early, and one of them was, that the council does approve these resolutions tonight, but they still have to go to the Joint Review Board to be approved by that before these TID districts actually go into place. Okay? We are looking for a motion to approve this Resolution 1511, which will establish TID 11 tonight, if you feel comfortable in approving that.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 1511, establishing the boundaries and approving the project plan for tax increment district number 11.
We have a motion by Veliker,
I'll second it.
second by Hagan, that we approve of this resolution number 1511. Any further discussion? Sandy, call the roll.
Dimitri Martin,
I have a conflict of interest, so I have to abstain because I'm a realtor and I may wind up selling one of those properties.
okay. Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Colin Dykstra,
No.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Henry Veliker,
Aye.
and Dave Peterson, and Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
We have 7 ayes, 1 abstain, and 1 no. Motion carried.
Just for FYI, was a supermajority, but is this required supermajority? Do we know that?
It does not. I
Just
checked.
a
I checked
simple
on that.
majority?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So the motion does pass. Okay, next up is resolution number 1512. And this is establishing in TID number 12. So very similar, just different project.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Smith. This is on page 221 of your packet. That'd be the resolution. And then we get into the project plan on 224. I'm not going to go through all the exact details. I'll hit on the differences. Again, this is a mixed-use TID, so it's same exact as the last one we talked about with the same life expectancy and expenditure periods. Much less, though, just because it's a smaller area, smaller geographical area. We have no newly platted residential planned in this area, so we didn't have to worry about that 35% threshold. Expenditures, again, much less, 841,000 or just over that is expected. And then you can see maybe an increment or a land value or improvement value of 3 million created by the end of 2025. So this is really being proposed as we looked at what other area, we're under the 12%, what other area do we have that's notified or that's noted in our comp plan as kind of a main corridor that we want to have an impact on. And the Churchill Street corridor came up. And also there's a couple properties within the boundaries of this TID that, well, it's in a neighborhood mixed use district right now, which is like a business zoning. And there are some old industrial uses that are kind of lingering and hanging over, and this can help kind of switch that to fit that neighborhood and have a more positive impact on that neighborhood. So that's one of the main things that we're looking to accomplish with TID number 12. Again, the but-for creation, this one is, as far as the but-for creation, I think same thing. We feel the same way as we do about TID 11, but for different reasons. When you have an old industrial use property and those types of buildings are sitting on it and you want it redeveloped into a more neighborhood business or a mixed use type of property, oftentimes the cost that goes into site prepping, doing those types of things with buildings that are sitting there make it, that doesn't pencil without a tool like this. So that's a main reason that we see that meeting the but-for this specific area. All the same there. Here is page 231. You can see the boundaries of that Tif district in red. Royalton Street at the north, Churchill Street, the very north end of Churchill Street. Next page, you can see the half-mile radius. Again, existing uses and conditions on page 233. That's where you can see kind of this brown area is that industrial use that we'd be looking to change to that neighborhood mixed use. And then the preliminary parcel list that we looked at kind of in relation to Dimitri's question on the last one, you can see the improvements, the total improvements, both land and the improvements on the property here at 635,000. Again, that 635,800 would then freeze. We would continue to collect that for the life of the TID. And then the increment and the value generated above and beyond that would stay within the TIF district. Equalized valuation, again, it does meet the 12% test, even under the consideration that TID 11 was created. And then you can just kind of see some estimates for development projects and what those costs may be, starting on page 235. And I think we're pretty much to the point. Just again, method of financing, and then I can kick it to you again for the cash flow pro forma for TID 12.
Certainly. So then up again in the base value, we do see that $635,800. That is your base value. You can see that going down to 2024, where we do start to see the $1.5 million increment added. That is just based on preliminary numbers. This is also set up as a pay-go in the expenditures, which will be the financing option that we hope to use. This pro forma will cash flow in 2038.
Thanks. And as we talk about TID number 8, let's remember that this is Churchill Street corridor, and although we've had some indication from some of the businesses that are on Churchill Street in that new TID 12, as I would say, we don't have anything that we can say for sure that's going to happen. So nothing will get expended unless we have a project that actually happens there. Anybody else have any questions on this?
I have a couple comments, if I may.
Go ahead, Colin.
I think that this is probably the most critical area of the city to develop, and that I feel like the boundaries we are creating are too small. A couple of years from now, we'll have a new city garage on the other end of Churchill Street. We have a city garage we're using that we could use TIF funds to make into something else. The housing that's on this city is predominantly owned by investors. When I went through the tax roll, only 4 houses I could identify were owner-occupied. So there's a lot of potential, I think, for investment into this city, into this area of the city. And I would recommend the boundary be quite a bit larger from one end of Churchill to the other.
Kathy, you want to respond?
Sure. The only reason that we made it this small was because of the 12%. So with TIF 11, this property, if we started to expand it, we wouldn't be able to do what we did with TIF 11. The other option, though, is that we are creating the half-mile radius on this TIF. So anything around within that half-mile radius, we could use TIF dollars to do incentive type of improvements, and they would impact the tax roll immediately. It would not stay within the TID. So that's the reason why that it's set up this way.
Okay. Henry, I saw you had your hand up.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to say I really commend the staff for their creativity here, and I like the 1 mile radius. This is important entrance, and hopefully we can do something about those 45-degree power poles over the mill pond.
Right.
I mean, a little tongue-in-cheek, but to Kathy's point, as things occur here, and I think they will, we can do some infrastructure improvements maybe to address the aesthetics coming into the town. So I think that's really creative. Thank you guys for coming up with that.
Thanks, Henry. Good comments. Staff. Paul.
I just had a question and comment. Under the assumptions for this particular one, we're assuming 0% inflation, and the previous was 1% inflation, and we're not experiencing anything even close to that right now. So I was just wondering why we're not using a more realistic inflation rate under our assumptions.
Probably to be very, very conservative. If you're not expecting any type of inflationary growth within that TID, then the expectations aren't built into that increment that would be created. So I think not having any inflationary value to that TID, especially where it's located, and the fact that most of these that we're looking at are not-for-profit, old industrial buildings, they could be torn down. So I think that's a more conservative projection.
Well, the previous one was 1% inflation, somewhere in the neighborhood of 8% right now. Just saying, it doesn't seem at all close to reality.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think, the pro formas probably should have had the same inflation rate on them. I mean, I think the most important part that you get out of the pro forma, quite honestly, because we are guesstimating what's going to happen is that we are going to be able to pay any debt off within that 20-year time frame. So it's not going to fall onto the responsibility of just the city taxpayers. So that's the most important thing that you should really get out of the pro forma. But I agree, you know, we should make those pro formas look similar as far as like inflation rates, interest rates, and so on. So
Mayor, on TIF 12, we aren't anticipating any debt with this.
it's going to be all pay-go.
It's all just pay-go.
Okay. Thank you. But again, we'll be able to close the tip off within that 20 years. Okay, anybody else? All right, this is the same as TID 11. Basically, we are going to hopefully approve it at this meeting for the city council, and then it will go to the joint review board for their approval after that. So we'd be looking for a motion to approve resolution number 1512.
Move to approve. I'll second it.
Motion by Martin, second by Dykstra, that we approve resolution number 1512. This is formally establishing the boundaries of and approving the project plan for TID number 12 in the city of Waupaca. Any further discussion? Go ahead.
I just have one little thing. I was kind of waiting for the end. Could my name be spelled right, my last name in the book?
No.
Thank you.
Does it have a T in it?
Yeah, that's it. And it always kind of comes through, and I thought, it'd really be nice if
Yes.
Sorry, Laurie.
we took the T. Oh, no, it's fine.
We'll get it fixed. Laurie.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, anybody else? Sandy will call a roll.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Colin Dykstra,
Aye.
Paul Hagan,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Dimitri Martin,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
and Henry Veliker.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
All right. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, council, for these approvals, and look as we move forward on these. Next up, we have some mayor's appointments, and I'll turn that over to our council president, Paul Mayo.
Thanks, Mayor. The mayor appoints Kevin Will to the Joint Review Board to replace Joyce Boyer, the Waupaca County representative, and appoints John Turner and John Miller to the Library Board to replace Rebecca Thiem Baseman and Joyce Boyer, respectively. After hearing the mayor's appointments, I need a motion and a second to approve.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Chestnut, second by Martin, to approve the mayor's appointments to the Joint Review Board and the Library Board. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Back to you, Mayor.
All right, thanks, Paul. Good job. Next up, we might be a little late on this, but we're going to turn it over to Aaron and just talk about the review for 2021, and then also talk about his work plan for 2022. So, Aaron, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. So we try to do this in the spring. We're late spring. I think a lot of our focus as department heads as we worked on the employee rewards program and implementing that and rolling it out. Sat down with the mayor about a month ago and was like, we got to do this. I got to bring this to council. So the first thing I wanted to do is review the goals from 2021 and were they achieved, were they not? So I'll go ahead and just start with that. First goal, identify options for next residential development. That is something that we did achieve as a group. We've been talking about it a lot. We just talked about it right now. So River North was that area. Goal, finalize an orientation process for city council. It should have been complete in May of 2021, and we were able to achieve that too. We put together an orientation packet, started with Colin and went through that process. And then it was a group effort, though, because department heads certainly have to be involved as they go through what we call speed dating meetings. And Colin, I know you've mentioned maybe we should change that, and we really should. But they are going through those with Henry now as well to give updates on their department. So we're happy, and thank you to department heads for assisting with that. Explore the feasibility of a pay-for-performance incentive program. That is something we achieved. We talk about that in City Council. I want to thank you for your efforts and your support of that as we approved that a couple months ago as well. Re-engage department heads and myself. So we were coming off of in 2020 when we created these, we were locked down for a lot with COVID, and we weren't able to attend trainings, and we had gone a year plus without getting into our continued education, and everyone was able to do that and make that a priority, myself and department heads as well. Work with Kathy through an inclusive budget process that will begin in August and wrap up no later than November 16th. I kind of have this as achieved, not achieved, and the achieved part, we were able to start the process a month earlier. We did meet that timeline, August through November. With the staffing challenges we've had in the finance department, Kathy and I were just talking, this just the last couple days, we could make it, we think there's room to grow from an inclusive standpoint, and we'll continue to work on that. Transition the CDA members from Business Incentive Program administrators to a group that gives input and guidance on all economic development strategy. I think it's in progress. Actually, I'll say I attended the first CDA meeting that I've attended in a while last night. And I've been absent for, probably 4 or 5 months. Jared and Andrew Dane have been the staff members that have been leading them through that. And I actually did. It was funny because I actually could very visibly tell the difference in engagement and conversation and discussion last night than when I was there last time. So that was really cool to see. That's a work in progress. You don't just learn economic development initiatives overnight. We have some really good CDA members. They've done a great job with the Downtown Business Incentive Program. And we'll continue to work them into conversations with our overall economic development strategy. Next goal, continue to improve customer focus within the Community and Economic Development Department. I think that it's never complete, right? We can never be customer focused enough in what we do. However, I think that we've made great progress in this, and I have in here in due large part to the work that Jared's done, and since he's got on in September of 2021. I think he has the technical ability and the knowledge to navigate our code. Also has that, operates from that mindset of understanding customer needs and working with them to find solutions. And he has worked with his team, Elizabeth and Rhonda, to be able to make great strides in that area. So I give them a lot of credit there. Also, work with staff and local employers on tax credit programs, grants, and attract a workforce housing project. So unfortunately, I have in progress here, but I wrote this before we heard. I would say we did not meet this. We did work with, and we did submit an application jointly with a developer for a tax credit project. Unfortunately, we heard that we did not get that, or they did not get awarded that tax credit project. So it's just something we'll continue to work on. See what we can do to maybe look at location. How can we score higher in the future? But it's not like that need has gone away, right? If anything, it's probably gotten more of a priority. So we'll continue to give it our priority as staff. The next goal, work with department heads and staff to foster some community and civic pride. Specifically, we had mentioned that Main Street Halloween celebration. That was fantastic. It was a great success. I've been a part of a lot of events in my working career, and that probably is the most successful event I've been a part of. And again, that was a team effort, a bunch of department heads, Sue, Justin, Andrew, everybody, Cassandra, who's no longer with us, had a lot to do with that. Hold Staff Council Appreciation Event. We did achieve that on December 8th of 2022. We were able to use it as a little educational session as we talked and got engagement over our employee rewards program. But also we're able to give staff and elected officials who were able to make it a nice meal and a little bit of thanks for all that they do. It's never enough, but we were able to do that, and we got so much good feedback on that we're going to try to make sure that we do that twice. I saw that, Chief, twice in 2022. Hosted a developer summit in August and September of 2021. This was not achieved. This has been on my list 2 times, and I have not achieved it 2 times. The first time I had COVID as an excuse. This time, I think things just kind of changed, and we went from a point where 2 years ago we were really needing to drum up and find ways to get creative, to have people interested in developing in our area, to it transformed to we are just doing everything we can to keep up with issuing permits, site plan, working with them from a zoning standpoint, a building inspection standpoint, and really the priority wasn't there. We were seeing the development that we were hoping we would see, and we just didn't put effort into that. Although I said I'm taking it off my list for this year, but now I've got a couple staff members, Jared and Andrew Dane, that have conversations about maybe trying to do something still next fall. Create a strategy on how to attract high-quality candidates for upcoming department head vacancies. So I look back at this at the end of the year and I said, well, that's not a thing. There's not just this is how you do that, right? I think it comes over the culture you build over time. And I think our city council allows us to have a very positive culture. So I want to thank you all for that. It comes from the top down, and our department heads are great. And I think the more, hopefully, people talk positively, the people that are in our organization, that's really what's going to drive attracting and retaining high-quality employees. So there's not, I don't think we can create a tool that just says that we're successful in that. Goals for 2022. So as you noticed, probably in those 2021 goals, most all of them are tied to the strategic plan. So we're still working off that strategic plan that was adopted a few years ago. I can tell you that over the last couple of years, it was very heavy on accelerating economic development, because that was one of the top priorities. This year, the goals changed from accelerating economic development to employee retention and recruitment and those types of things. And that's kind of what you'll see a little bit heavier lean on here in 2022. So number one, we have a lot of these things already in process, but it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort to make sure they get done well. The first being that we need to successfully administer and implement the recently adopted employee rewards program. Continuing to work on that with department heads. That's going to be we'll be working on it continuously throughout the course of 2022. Host a minimum of the 2 employee appreciation gatherings in 2022. I already mentioned that. Onboard a new finance director. We've started that, and provide support to ensure that she is set up for success. And I think our team of trainers are doing a great job in that, so I thank them. Work with staff to ensure successful execution of the home repair program. It's in process. Work with staff and council and HDG to execute housing strategy in River North. That will be a big priority in 2022. Research, educate, and propose a strategy to remain competitive with employee compensation during the 2023 budget process. So we know that the culture is huge. There's a lot of things that we can do that are non-monetary, not benefit. But it is my job as a city administrator to make sure that I'm doing research and ensuring that we're competitive in those areas too. So I'll be spending some time on that this year. Continuing to implement employee satisfaction survey. I want to do that 3 times per year, and take that feedback, talk about it in our department head meetings, and incorporate that into policies, everyday work. So we're kind of hearing from our employees on what they value. Develop opportunities for unscripted employee recognition, and then engage and develop employees and future leaders through the employee rewards program. So that's kind of almost that succession planning through our employee rewards program. always list some training opportunities in our growth plan for 2022. So as department heads and supervisors, and as a part of that employee rewards program, we all had one of our 2 growth goals be ensuring that we work with our staffs to do that, basically a new program, administer it, and that it's a success, and that we are in fact helping our staff grow in the areas that we collaboratively defined as opportunities. And then the other one is one that so you can see we kind of created these standardized forms that each of us filled out, and it gives our goals, shows the obstacles, has actions with deadlines that we need to take to be successful on them. And then the other one besides the employee rewards program for me is I have the 2 of the same in here. Sandy, I sent you the wrong one. The other one is I have another form that shows I'm going to go through 3 ICMA skill building workshops. That's going to be my personal growth plan. Those skill building workshops do take a number of days. The reason I chose them, there are a couple of opportunities, but a couple of the opportunities, to be honest, were pretty expensive. These are pretty affordable. We've heard very good things from other administrators on these, and I will plan to attend them and finish those up by November. Not only finish them up, but then take things and implement them into our department head meetings and throughout our organization. So, honestly, these questions are a part of our self-evaluation process every year too. What department and organizational resources would improve your effectiveness? There's really, I think I could say the same thing every year. The number one thing for an administrator, anybody in my position, is to have really cohesion and professional relationships with our city council and elected officials. I feel I honestly count my blessings every day that I'm in the situation that I'm in. So I thank you all for that. And also having staff as we do, great department heads. And as we talked about last year, we don't always agree. But when we do, we have those conversations and in respectful and productive manners. It's certainly something that helps us be effective in the long run. And then obstacles, it's always time management. Anytime any city administrator, any public works director, park and rec director, finance director, any department head will tell you the same thing. There's priorities, and you can get thrown off track all day, every single day. It's just being able to balance those and then setting priorities, and that's just something we're continuously working on. So yeah, that's a little bit of a review of 2021 and 2022 and plans. Would love to answer any questions or hear any feedback or anything that you guys have.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Again, just as a reminder, part of the process of when we hired Aaron is that he put together a format where we could judge his ability to be an administrator. And so he's done this by showing us what he's accomplished in 2021, by giving us those goals at the beginning of the year, and then being as truthful as he can what he's accomplished throughout the year. And he's set up his goals for 2022, so you'll be able to see those. Remember, we used an outside firm to help us in the past, and we just felt that we could handle this internally now, since we have it set up in a pretty good format. So look forward to seeing this not only with our city administrator, but hopefully with all of our immediate staff. I think it's a great way to know that we are moving forward in successes in our city. So Aaron, thank you for putting all the effort into that tonight.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? Next up, we have issues, projects, discussions, which is a 30-minute maximum presentation tonight. We have a presentation about the new Public Works facility. And I'm going to turn it over real quick because Justin told me 30 minutes and it's going to be 30 minutes. So.
Thank you, Mayor. We're getting set up right now.
Yeah, I'll put the timer on.
Oh, can you switch that, Aaron, to the podium, please?
Yes, sir, I can.
And we have Norman. Yeah, so we have 30 minutes. It may take all that because it is a very big, important project.
Hey, Justin, make sure you're talking to the microphone because Mary's.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have 30 minutes, and it might take all that. I'm just warning everyone because it is a very important project to our community and obviously for Public Works. So I have a couple individuals with me tonight helping with the presentation. I'll get into introductions here in just a minute. As we go along, if you have questions or comments, feel free to blurt them out, raise a hand, whatever. If you'd rather prefer to wait to the end, save them, and we can address them at the very end. But I guess this is to recap the new facility that we're planning over at Habercorn Field. So in front of you, actually, I'm going to stop here for a second. Mary, can you see the screen?
Mary, are you still on?
Maybe we lost her.
When he switched inputs, he probably took her off the microphone.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah, we could see her up here, but okay.
All right. Well, Mary, if you can hear us, just let us know. So, like I said, introductions, then we'll review what we have for our existing facilities, where we're at, where we're going. We'll be talking about the current market and some of the challenges that we've been seeing. Our approach to the project, obviously what we're currently doing, some of the things we have done, and moving forward into construction. Of course, everything about the project as far as just the general information of it, and then finally wrapping up with the budget and financials. So the project team, obviously it's City of Waupaca, primarily represented by myself, Director of Public Works, Justin Behrens. We had two council members, Scott Perchaski and Mary Fair, help us, especially during the RFP process, and have attended a couple meetings. And of course, we have public works staff, our superintendents attending most all of our meetings. About a year ago, we brought on an architect to help us with this project and kick it off as far as the design and planning. In that, through an RFP process, we selected Barrientos Design and Consulting, and with us tonight is...
Hi, I'm Norman Barrientos. I'm the principal in charge, and I'm leading the architecture and engineering for this project. Good to see you all. I've seen some of you last summer.
And a sub to Barrientos is Hardwood Engineering, who's going to also assist with the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, site civil, those sort of things. And then just a handful of months ago, we brought on board a contractor rep, Myron Construction, and rep tonight is...
Hi, everyone. My name is Lydia Frias. I'm a customer executive with Myron Construction. Again, glad to be here. Thank you for selecting us as your construction management partner. And I am kind of from the area. I grew up in Iola, so it's really kind of fun for me to be a part of this one. I'm definitely familiar with the area and familiar with the site. So.
Yes, and Myron's brought on board to help with the constructability reviews, help with the estimates, and then put together our bid package, competitive bid package as we move forward here. So we do have to recap what we have right now for existing facilities. Not everyone on council or even on staff was here when this thing started out. And of course, it's a public meeting, so it's always good to get that word out as to why we're doing this. So right now, well, the city went through with a study in 1989, reviewing all of the existing facilities that we had. And from that study came three major points. One was to expand the rec center, one was to renovate PD, and then finally to consolidate public works operations. So, of course, two of three of those were completed already, and the third, the goal is to follow through with this project and build this new facility. Now, consolidation, what does that mean? Well, we have several satellite garages scattered throughout the city. We have a garage on, well, for street department, a garage on Water Street where it houses several pieces of equipment, cold patch, some gravel, and is our main sign shop there. We have a shop on Churchill Street, which is where this picture is from. Again, it's a bunch of pieces of equipment. We share space with Park and Rec there. And then we have our main shop for street department out of Oborn Street, which is right next to the treatment plant. That is our main shop where we operate out of. It has the street superintendent office, the mechanic office, the mechanic repair garage and bays, and then also a handful more garage bays for mostly our plow trucks. Water department is also involved in this project, and they are on Harding Street on a building that is of unknown age. So all the operators work out of that one building along with their equipment. So the age of these buildings, Water Street, Churchill Street, are over 100 years old. Their condition is starting to fade fast. This picture here at the Churchill Street garage, there is a crack in the backside of the foundation, roughly 4 to 6 inches wide, and is literally falling or sliding down to the Waupaca River. The Harding Street garage has a structural failure in the steel frames. It has literally corroded all the way through on one of the columns, and it's recommended not to go on the roof for inspections or repairs because of how unsafe it is. So of the 2 of the 3 buildings that the street department works out of are over 100 years old. The Oborn Street is much newer, is built like in the 80s and 90s. We plan on keeping that building at the end. But of course, it is time to consolidate and move on. Actually, go back a second, please. So as we have gone through this process and looked at our buildings and thought how we can solve this, we ran some numbers thinking like, okay, what is the root of the problem here? So between all these facilities, our crews have to show up every day, punch in, get their orders, and then go to the various garages to get the right pieces of equipment, the right materials and tools, and then finally go do their work. We have estimated, and we've ran the numbers several times, that over the course of a full year, we are wasting about $30,000 of labor time just going to these various shops to get the right equipment, the right materials, the right tools, and then finally move on with their day. So if we can consolidate, put them all underneath one roof, certainly that number would decrease substantially. Again, moving forward through time, we've studied a number of sites, starting with my predecessor, John, looking at sites throughout the city, whether it was a purchase of an existing building and renovate or vacant land and build new. All those studies have pretty much pointed towards a brand new build being the most efficient use of our dollars. In 2017, we purchased what is known as the Habercorn Field site from the school district, with the understanding that that would be the new home for the new facility. And in 2018, through that budget process, we set that budget. So what's showing up there was based on an initial preliminary study that we hired out an engineering consultant. This was the first look at how a facility would lay out on this property and fit our needs, and from there we developed our budget, which we developed the $6.5 million for construction. Now that's the number that everyone has in their head, which is obvious. It's a big number, no doubt about it. But on top of that, we also put aside about 10% for engineering, and then we had a few other items wrapped in there, such as site survey and some geotechnical. So all in all, total project of just over $7.1 million. So this is what we're working with moving forward. And then today's market, this is what we have to work with, but we are seeing some challenges. And Lydia, I'm going to turn it over to her to explain those more in detail.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So like he said, we've seen a changing market. 2018 feels like it wasn't that long ago, but when you look in the construction world, there's been a lot that has changed. So what I wanted to show you today is a graph that was created by Mortensen Construction. If you ever heard of them, they're a very large contractor out of Minnesota. They provide yearly metrics that are actually recognized across the industry. And the nice thing about these metrics is that they do them regionally. So I was able to pull some data from Milwaukee as to the cost of construction and how it has changed since 2018. So we put a star there. That was roughly when that budget was created. So if you look at your x-axis as time and your y-axis as cost, as you can see, there's a very steep incline from 2020 to 2021. That's about it's actually over 23% increase in the cost of construction. And honestly, I've been on some projects personally that were affected even greater than that through that time period. Now, if you look at what's happened in the communities during that time, right, pandemic, it has drastically affected the construction industry from a lead time perspective, material shortage perspective. It's definitely, I would say, flattened out a little since that steep increase. However, we're still affected. A few other things that have also happened. Amazon decided to announce that they were building a very large amount of warehouses. I love Amazon, so I can't be too mad. But what it did is actually locked up our joist and deck market. It caused lead times for steel to push to almost a year. There was also weather in Texas that affected roofing materials. All of a sudden, roofing now you can't get for 11 months, and there's premiums on roof insulation. So again, there is a combination of things that definitely hit the industry. We definitely have ways that we like to account for those things, and especially moving forward as we look ahead. But we wanted to just show you what these costs or how these percentages and this inflation actually affects a project. So I know it's a little small on here, but if you look at 2018, a project like yours that was just over 7.1 million. If you take Mortenson's metrics and you apply that to 2021, you get over $9.1 million. What we then did is we said, okay, if we steadily increase at a rate of 4% from 2022 to 2023, which is when we would anticipate to build the structure, that's over $9.8 million. So essentially, the project in 2018 that cost 7.1 now costs 9.8 million in 2023. Now, I guess anyone who's been to the grocery store, gas station, right? I'm sure you felt this in some form. We're just feeling it a little stronger in the construction industry. So I want you to be mindful of this value as we go through the next few slides. We're going to show you some of the steps we've taken so far, where we're at, and then we're going to really show you what we're here to present tonight, which is our most recent concept and budget. So just showing you a quick visual of the process. Like we said, budget was established in 2018. You went to request for proposal for a CM partner in fall of 2021. That's when Myron got on board. We then gave you guys a budget price, and that led to a revised concept. From there, we've gone to schematic design, and that's where we are at now. So what does that really mean to you? Right now, this group here is meeting bi-weekly. We're talking constructability. We're talking how many vehicles do we need in there now? How many are we going to need in the future? Types of materials. What is this going to look like? Who's the end user here? How is this going to work for the city? Providing cost feedback on all of that. And we're going to continue that until we until we bid that and then start construction in spring of 2023. Another thing too we're doing now, focus on energy. We are in that program, so we're looking at incentives. We're looking at potential savings in the future. But again, just trying to give you some perspective of what our focus is. So as we look forward in the presentation, we're going to break this down a little further just to kind of show you these concepts that we've come up with before we dive deeper into the concept we're here to really present to you guys. So I will just quickly introduce this and then I'll throw it back to the team here. But so at the RFP, this was the concept that Myron was shown. That's roughly 50,000 square feet. And Myron anticipated this to be worth $14 million. So I'm gonna let the group kind of dive in as to what this project includes or what this concept includes.
Well, I'm going to focus on the development of the design where we left off in the summer, August of 2021. We had finished a space needs assessment, a detailed room by room program of the number of cars needed, number of repair bays needed, the amount of bulk storage, the number of lockers, the number of people going to be in the offices, and who's going to be in the assembly areas, and also quantifying the cold storage. So those are the major functional areas in this. There's also the site too. And based on that initial go-around and discussion, we came up with this 48,000 square foot facility. Then we had Myron price it, and we also were, I should say, assuming a precast building at that point. So that was not going to fly. So, yeah, go ahead.
So this layout included park and rec operations as well. So the two parks field staff, so the park caretaker and cemetery sexton, were included in this building as far as office space, break room space, locker room space, and then all of their equipment under one roof in the main garage. And they also included all of Public Works equipment, all underneath the one main heated garage, and also room to grow. And so upon seeing this, I mean, this was based on all the past information. I mean, we challenged Barrientos and Myron to make this fit or make it work with closer to our budget.
Right. So we were fairly aggressive in revising this concept and sitting down with the staff another session and going through all the design assumptions for parking and for bulk storage, for repair bay activities, parts storage, the sign shop, the meter water shop, and again, the officing. And as Justin said, who needs to be here? Let's move out parks. And how can we condense everything? So after a month's effort, we revised it down to 31,000 square feet. But we also threw a lot of trucks out into either out in the open or in a cold storage. So you're seeing 31,000 square feet main building, and then there's a 11,000 square foot cold storage building that would be on the site. So, yeah. Yeah, keep that. Yeah.
Yep. So when we looked at this one, we as Public Works, we laid out our vehicles in each stall, looked at how the offices were laid out, and honestly, this did not function and match our operations. So we just felt to build or to just keep going forward with something like this was just irresponsible. I mean, obviously, it wasn't solving the problem. It was just giving us a new building and making the problem a little bit more localized. So we had one more adjustment.
Yeah. So, it's a very tight facility and it's underperforming. And so, as the architect working with Justin and the team, we came up with a option where we made the parking garage larger, and we proposed a tempered storage building as a separate building. That's about that thing is about 8,500. Thank you, square feet. And then just to show you what these other colors mean, what you're seeing at the very top up here of this is the wash bay. And then we have a repair bay. There's two heavy-duty bays that you can put your existing lift and then have mobile column lifts. And then there's a light-duty lift repair bay here. So there's three. There's parts storage in the mechanics office. And then we have a sign shop and then the meter water shop. And there's a mechanical room, which we have to lay out, obviously, things for boilers and panels. And this one's a little outdated, but you're getting into the office area and then the crew area and that. So do you want to say anything at what pricing came out of this or anything?
Yeah, so just quickly. So as you can see, now we're at just under 10.7 million. So we're no longer at 14, and we said, okay, but we're closer to something that's more realistic, and we're in more of that right-sizing mentality. When you look at your drivers and your goals for this, we know cost and functionality are equally important. We're this close, right? We're now balancing that. So what we then did is Justin brought some great ideas to the table and said, how can we maximize these dollars if we are going to go with a project that's in the $10 million range? How can now we maximize those dollars most efficiently? And that was then what we did in this next concept that we want to present to you in more in depth.
Yeah, and one thing you'll see on this one, is going back one, is there is a separate cold or tempered storage building here, and through our pricing and analysis, it worked out better just to make an addition here and replace this with a slightly smaller heated area and make it one building. So What we've come up with is this 36,800 square foot facility. We went from precast to a pre-engineered metal building for most of the building, except in the purple area and the green area, which is the truck wash repair garage. Everything else, though, is going to be a metal building with a 6-foot precast panel as the base for impact and resistance. So it's, on the market-wise, it's the least expensive building system to get the most coverage and appropriate still for this kind of automobile shop environment that we're going to have in here. We still have, we increased that from the schematic design. This revised one has an addition here just off the back of the repair bay, although this still allows for a truck to pull through from one of the repair bays and from the truck wash and come into parking, which is a nice sequence. We also added a lean-to bay on this west side, and that's for cold storage. So that's a future one, actually, but it can be done as a way to alleviate not having a separate tempered storage building. And then below that, we still have the parts for the mainly for the vehicles, and then the shop mechanic and street superintendent, the sign shop, the water meter shop now is here, and these all have overhead doors, so they can pull in or into the garage. And then we have a mechanical room, and then this orange area here is the crew locker lunch area, and then this orange area here is the main entrance, the director's office and a facilities office, and then the 4 water people have their one workstation, one general area, which they're kind of in right now. So we really compacted the design. We got rid of hallways. We've gone through each room and thought about, can we tighten it up, and compacted this. And we still have the arrangements, so the sequence of people parking or staff parking, coming in for assembly and getting their parts, or people coming to visit just in here can come in and be securely greeted, and then they have their office area. And everything else bellies up to the parking garage. One thing in the early designs, we had hallways between the garage and the offices. We got rid of those. A lot of times you have to pass through an office to get to another area, but it cut back tremendously on circulation space. So we feel that we've done a very strong effort to compact the design but not lose efficiency, productivity, your asset protection, worker safety, and of course meeting building codes, being building efficient. And one thing you don't see in these drawings, but it is a metal building overall. Actually, you'll see that in our renderings. Do you want me to move on or make any comments further here about this site? Okay.
As Norman alluded to, we have almost no hallway space in this building, so it's just laid out. I mean, hallway is just used for moving through, and we eliminated that just to get a more efficient use of every square inch that we could. We looked into some early green technologies, geothermal, and scrapped those ideas just because the initial cost was just way too much and too long of a return on investment. Solar panels, there is a future area, and we will put in provisions to accommodate a future solar array, so built in with an electrical, and then also have a conduit built out. And when we do that, we do get a better focus on energy rebate. So we're working with Focus to get a rebate based on all these improvements, whether it's LEDs, timings, controls, that sort of thing. Looking at a rebate of around $12,000 to $15,000. Another efficiency that we built in, the pink area on the bottom is our, it's our locker room, it's our break room, it's our conference room. So in one iteration, those were all separate. Now we have basically a shared conference room and break room with a divider wall, so we can have meetings going on at the same time break is occurring. So 5 to 12 people in each room doing what you need to do. We can, I guess, move or close that divider wall, accordion wall, and then open it up to the trainings that we typically do annual or quarterly basis to basically house 20 to 40 people if we really want to. So it's kind of a shared space, and again, maximizing every square foot that we could. And the offices, yes, many of them are shared, and again, just to be as efficient as possible. So
yeah, and even the locker room, on that note is it's an open locker room, and there's 3 individual bathrooms. So the employees, if they need to change, go into a bathroom stall, and then it's one locker room. It's not men's, women's, and that also creates a lot more space. You start splitting up because then you have separate locker areas and bathrooms for both sexes. Okay, and just so you can see from the site, just a few comments there. Coming off of Michigan here, the main entry is we hugged the property line. We're actually, the parking lot that we have here is on the city right away, but so we're making use of some of that for parking. And so the staff can come here, vendors come into the parts, and then obviously the heavy trucks come into the repair garage, or they're coming to park and coming around. So it's if we thought through the circulation and sequences at the end of the day, how the trucks approach, where they're gonna go. There's a fuel station across the way from the truck wash, and then in our site plans, there's room still to put another cold storage building if the city wants to. From our earlier site, we didn't show you the site plans, but we lost we reduced an acre of paving on the overall, which means a lot. That was subgrade paving, stormwater drainage. So we shrunk the site and pulled it in as well from our earlier designs. And then this is, I think, not much more to say in here, just kind of the beginning of the architectural set. We actually finished what, beyond our schematic, we've started moving into design development. We got engineering going, now we're getting into, we're putting electrical panels and boilers, and we're thinking of efficient ways, like we're putting some of the mechanical units in there's an interstitial space here above the ceiling here. This is a very high ceiling, and you've probably seen a lot of manufacturing buildings where it's just one long slope, and then the offices are on one bar of this slope. That's what we've got here, and we don't have like a separate roof. Yeah, well, got the render coming up. Yeah, but in that in the middle space there, we've put the mechanical here. So I was saying we've got the mechanical units up in here above the ceiling. So architecturally, we want to give the city a building that's civically appropriate. It's not extravagant. It's a durable industrial building. We've thought it out. It's practical. It's functional. We did. And Barranto spent our team a lot of time actually thinking about the aesthetics on this. So it's, we want to get the nice balance of metal panels, some variety of block and even brick, and a little bit of a canopy, and make sure people can tell where the entrance is. That's key in some of these big buildings. You can kind of lose your sense of where to go, where to enter on this. And a little bit of an overhang too on this entry side here, so people have some protection from rain and snow. You can see it's one long structure, but the garage actually ends about this door here, the parking garage, and this part's admin down here. And then what you're seeing in the back is the repair garage, and that's for our back. We're almost on Michigan here. You can see the overall profile of it rising up, and then the offices and the shops back here in parts, and then the repair bay. Now, we did decide to go with precast on the repair bay. The repair bay has a lot of equipment in it. A lot of things are strapped to the wall. There's a lot of impact. We have parts that are moving like vehicles or engine blocks. We've got lifts in there. There's oils in there. It needs to be washed down. And so we felt it best to stick with the precast in the repair garage. We think that's more durable for the kind of use you're going to have in there. And you can see the different overhead doors. And we're doing some minor architectural treatment on there just to differentiate it from the rest of the repair garage. So, and then actually just here, you're seeing the security gate as you go in. There will be a perimeter fence around this site, but it's pushed back at the very end here before you get to the repair garage. Oh, I can say one last thing.
Yeah.
One thing we did do on this repair garage is initially we did have an overhead crane, a traveling overhead crane, and discussions with Justin and his staff, we eliminated the overhead crane, and that lowered the whole building here by 7 feet, which is a fair amount of precast.
So as you get your budget handout, again, just one thing to be mindful of is this really is the option where we tried to balance your drivers of consolidating all your facilities under one roof with cost. So this is that happy marriage that we came up with. When you get it, page 5 is going to have the total cost. And then what you have attached on the end there is the ad for that storage lean-to that Norman referenced. Because right now we are proposing that to be an ad alternate. We do usually bid alternates just to make sure we're competitive and we're maximizing dollars as efficiently as we can. But page 5 is what's going to show you that total cost. So if you start at the top of this is really going to be your construction costs. So concrete, earthwork, paint. What really comes down to total construction. When you get down to page 5, it's actually the end of page 4. Oh yeah, end of page 4, you'll see that total. And then going into page 5, you'll see Myron soft costs. And then you will see design fees at the bottom to get you your total of $10,071,726. So would you like to go right to financials as they're looking through this and then hit questions? Does that work?
Sure.
Unless there's...
We have a question, Scott.
Yeah.
In your recent history here, how, if you can even quantify, when we go out to bid, has the environment been doing? Is it all of a sudden being inflated from what you're kind of coming up with here, or has it been a little less, or can you even tell that?
Yeah, so I don't have a crystal ball to answer yes or no, right? It's not black and white. But what I can tell you is that we learned a lot. I learned a lot throughout 20 and 21, right? We had to work with budgets that were passed in 2018, and they were trying to build in 20, right? So we do have time on our side with this, that we have now historical data. We're bidding projects weekly, so we have that real-time data in a pandemic market. And then from there, what we're doing, you'll see in our soft costs on that page 5, we are holding a contingency at 10%. Okay. When we go into building, that will be around 5%. So about half that cost right now is for us to be able to handle some of those market changes, as well as anything that may come up from like a code perspective or design change throughout the next few months here. Okay. If we don't have to use all that and we drop it back to 5% and we're good, that money goes right back to the project, that goes right back to the owner. So we are trying to safeguard as best as we can.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
She's going to come up to the podium. So Kathy will talk about the financial side of it. Obviously, this is going to take a different type of borrowing than we first initially set off for. So,
my challenge was to come up with another $3 million.
And you did it. And
Kathy,
you did it.
And not.
Kathy, here, let me help you pass them out, and you can be by the microphone.
There's 2 sheets for each. So I have to be creative to come up with another $3 million. And it had to be so that our plans that we have in our 5-year capital plan are not put on hold. The building continues to move forward, and it doesn't impact the taxpayer at all. So the creative way to do this would be kind of like what we did with the original borrow that we just did. We did a note anticipation note and waited for the market to be favorable and then locked in on a 20-year bond. Well, if you look at not the first page, but the second and third pages, we're looking at the graph on the third page. It shows what our capacity is under our debt policy. So we have a very conservative debt policy. So I'm trying to fit this extra $3 million in, and I can't under general obligation bonds and not impact the taxpayer or our policy. So I'm looking at a note anticipation note. However, I'm going to have the debt capacity of the water utility, kind of like we've done in the past, to use their capacity to borrow on a revenue bond, on a note anticipation note, until that capacity that we can use GO, tax-supported debt, to pay that $3 million. So we're looking at a 5-year note anticipation note, and then in year 5, or if the rates do look more favorable, then turn it into a general obligation taxable note, and then spread that out. At that time, in that 5-year time, we will still continue to be able to borrow $1.5 million for our road projects that we have in our capital plan, and then do that $3 million, because we'll have paid enough debt down that we can fit that extra $3 million in. And that'll probably be about 2026, 25. So it'll be almost at the end of the construction process that we're going to have for the building anyways. One of the options that I was told to do was, well, what if we just don't do the project at all? What do we do? Well, that's not very feasible to go out and borrow $7 million and then tell your bondholders, we aren't going to do that, and try and buy your bonds back. You won't be able to call them. You'll have to hold them until we can call them, and you're going to be paying interest on money that you're not using. So that, and it also doesn't make good financial sense in borrowing additional money, because you're now maybe not having the bond buyers of your bonds more confident that you're going to be using it for the purpose that you're borrowing it for. So that definitely is not on the table to do. So that's why we've come up with this creative way of borrowing. It fits in, doesn't impact the taxpayer, but we wanted to make sure that you had time to look at this, because we would come back next month with Baird to look at doing the authorization to do this kind of borrow. So I wanted to make sure that you understood that we had to borrow another $3 million for this project, but that we could do it with using the water utility. That does not impact the ratepayers of the water utility, and it will also be able to do the building at a time when we can afford it within our policy and not affect the taxpayer. That's it. Any questions? Paul?
You said a 5-year note anticipation note?
Yes.
Isn't there a time limit on note anticipation notes?
No. No, we could, if we wanted to, we could pull it and pay it sooner if that was the case. But we wanted to do the 5-year only because we do have capital projects to continue to do our roads, so we don't affect our transportation aids, so that we continue to do our projects. So we're looking at that 5-year note anticipation note. So
That's the longest I've ever heard of that.
Well, you can do 3 to 5. So the other reason is that within that 5-year time frame, TIF 8 should be able to pay back debt service $1.6 million. So that would help in doing that capacity there.
Yeah, I think Henry.
That was my question, yeah, because the water fund's paying back the general fund.
Well, the water is going to be
the general fund's paying back the water fund for TIF
right.
8.
We'll use it when the note anticipation note gets called. We will only use revenue notes for the water portion of that debt, if you can see on that, because there is some debt projects that the water utility does have. The $3 million will drop off the water utility. That won't come back into the water utility. We'll just have a new note, GO for the $3 million part. And it would also pay back any debt service interest that the water utility paid. So the water utility would be made whole.
Would this note anticipation note affect our water rates or any of the limitations that
No.
the water utility is subject to?
No. The water utility currently only has 2018 revenue bond and a 2020 revenue bond. There isn't very much debt on that the water utility has outstanding. And this would be recorded as an advance to the general fund. So it would not be, we looked at the fact that we could use the water utility to borrow to do the project. The Public Service Commission would require us to have a construction authorization, and then it would have to go through the rates and everything. But if we do an advance that the water utility is technically borrowing the $3 million to the general fund, that does not need Public Service Commission authorization.
Any other questions? Again, this is just under the 30-minute, we're not asking for any action tonight, as Kathy has said, and as Justin has said earlier on. Any other comments? I can tell you this, that we are working with our financial Baird to come up with projections for future years on revenue and expenses to make sure that we can afford to pay this with some increased costs that we might have, and also with looking at different ways that we're receiving revenue too. So preliminary is we can afford it. We're not quite there yet, but we're under the assumption that we're still moving forward with this project, even though it has an increased cost on it. And we're working with that assumption as we bring forward some more information for you in the future to make sure that you fully understand that this is a project that not only is important for the community to complete, but that we can afford to do this project too. So we are truly doing our due diligence to try and get you as much information as we can to make sure that you make a good decision for the city and know that we can afford to handle this. Colin?
This is pretty much all new to me, so it's a little, I don't even know where to ask the questions. But my gut feel is that there's got to be some sort of risk toward the water utility, or you would have used this money already in that way, some other way. I mean, you've done some sort of work to keep whatever money you're accessing available. And so why is it available, and what would it normally be used for? And is there a risk that we're taking by using this money in a different way?
The risk is that we're only paying the interest costs for the water utility to borrow that $3.6 million in essence. So it's only interest that we're paying on that note anticipation note. So it's not any principal or anything like that. The reason the water utility has that capacity is that it hasn't had to borrow in the past. It is operating at a point where the ratepayers are paying enough, and if we had to raise rates, we wouldn't impact them because of this debt. It would be because of operations.
What type of things would the water utility borrow for?
Putting in new mains.
New mains?
The new mains that we're putting in High and Harrison. We've bought about $400,000 worth of new meters. So that kind of stuff that we've borrowed for. But most of it has been when we've done Main Street. There is almost $750,000 worth of water that was attributed to it. So that's where it.
So if those type of things become required, it might be more difficult to borrow for them if we use this capacity? Is it fair to say?
Because when we look at what the water anticipation is for projects during that time, it's not that it's not going to have enough money to do it. It's going to have enough money to do the mains when they need to be done. So the projects, the road projects that have mains in them are scheduled in 2025-6 after this note gets changed into a taxable note.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we have to remember, and we forget sometimes because we're the board of directors for the city of Waupaca, but we're also the board of directors for 3 different enterprises that we have in our city. One is the Waupaca Online is an enterprise fund, and meaning that it shows true profits and income and expenses that generate its own revenue. No different than a company, like the Foundry. They're an enterprise fund. They're in it to make money, and that's what we're doing with Waupaca Online. We're doing the same with the sewer, and we're also doing the same with the water. Well, the water department has an outdated building, and it needs to have a new location. And part of this public works facility, even though we're just calling it a public works facility, is to house the water department. And the water department has to pay to be able to be housed in that department. So we're borrowing from them at this time, even though a percentage, obviously, and I don't know the exact percentage that the water department is taking over in the public works facility, but let's say it's 30%. Well, 30% of 10 million is $3 million. Well, we're borrowing $3 million from the water department. When we get to the point where we borrow, it's better to borrow as GO. We get better rates by going with a general obligation loan than trying to go through the water department for a long-term debt. And then at that time, the water department will pay rent to the city for using that facility. So again, there's a logical succession in being able to do this. Kathy, I wanted you to just touch on our debt limit, the amount that we can borrow, and where we are in the city, because we're more conservative than the state is. We're not asking for that to be changed, but just to make you feel a bit more comfortable, the amount that we can borrow under our rules versus what the state rules are.
Right. The state says that we can go up to 5% of our equalized value, and we have a more stricter percentage, and we can only go up to 3.75% of our equalized value, and that's in debt outstanding. So when you look at the total debt capacity bar graph that's on page 3, is you see our current existing principal outstanding is the black, and the green is the 5-year capital plan that's going from 23 to 27. So we still have to borrow money for road projects that we have to continue to do and equipment. And then the other part is what our capacity is up to that 3.75. And so in 2023, we'd have 3.6 million in capacity to be able to borrow. But if we do that, we would be right at the max. And so we don't want to ever be at our max. And so we want to make sure that we wait until we can go in and do that 3 million and it doesn't affect anything else. And again, I also don't want to raise the debt tax levy either, because that would raise the mill rate. So we want to make sure that we kind of stay in that sweet spot where what our debt service costs are. And when you kind of look at one of Baird's things, and I'll have at the next meeting a little bit easier to read, is that the tax levy will stay flat. So we'll have enough capacity that we won't have an increase in the tax levy for debt service. Okay? So that's, I want to make sure that everybody knows that even though we're borrowing 10 million for this, the taxpayers aren't going to see an increase in their taxes because of this building. And the ratepayers won't see an increase in their water bill because of this building. So we've tried and came up with the best solution to make winners of everybody.
Anybody else? Scotty, go ahead.
I just want to give a big thank you. I was in on the ground floor of this building on that committee, and all the due diligence your whole group is, from Myron to Barrientos to you, Kathy, and Justin. All the changes that has happened here, and we're still going to be able to make this work. I really applaud your efforts, because it was not easy. It's not a normal build with the environment we're in. So thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Any other comments?
I would like to make one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to thank the council for understanding that this building's been in the works for a long time. And the only reason that we've been able to do this is because everybody has done planning. We've made sure that these projects get financed with no impact, like Main Street, and that with no impact to the taxpayers, and that we can still keep improving the community at an affordable cost. And that's because you're making really good decisions and directing staff as to what we have to do.
Thanks, Kathy. Anybody else? Justin, tell us what the next steps are here.
Well, next step, internally, we're going to keep moving forward with the design. Kathy's going to be coming back with a resolution for this additional borrow. And I believe that's about it.
And then remind us again the start date on the project if we approve everything.
Well, we're looking to break ground spring of 2023. So very shortly here, we need to get like our first competitive bid package out.
Correct. End of July, I believe, is when we're really trying to get that, or middle of July. That would be for our long lead time items like steel, which, like I said, is at over 9 months, and roofing. From there, we bid the rest of the project out in the fall to lock in all our subcontractors this year, so that next spring we're all ready, materials are ordered, and we can hit the ground running.
And the only reason that we're looking at the financing right now is that we want to be fluid enough so that any surprises are covered. We also want to make sure that when we do sign any of these contracts, that we have money available.
All right. Okay. Anybody else have any questions of them? So they can sit down? I feel sorry for them. Getting tired. Thank you. Justin, any final thoughts?
Just to make sure everybody knows that even though we're bringing forward this additional borrow, we still have our 5-year plan with all of our regular projects planned in there, whether it's police squads, park and rec projects, or road projects. Those things are all still unaffected. So.
All right, thank you. I want to bring up, and I probably haven't said this in a little while, but there are a couple of meetings that, as an elected official and as the mayor, I'm involved with the staff that council members, you are all invited to these whenever you have the opportunity to attend these meetings. And one of them is Aaron has named it the Dream Team meeting. And we meet the first and third, same as Council Day, the first and third Tuesday of every month. And we meet at 9:30. We meet in the council chambers. So there is room for you if you would like to stop in. And I'm getting to a point here, but I just want to tell you. And then the second meeting that we have is the dirt meeting that we have, the development review team. And that normally includes Jarrett, Justin, Aaron, myself, Greg, our grant writer, and Andrew Dane are the members there, and we meet up in the conference room outside of Aaron's office. Kathy participates when we're asking dollar numbers on that. And you are obviously welcome into those meetings. We would just ask that if you plan on attending the meetings, that you let us know at a time so that we can accommodate space for you and so on. I mean, my point is that I've been hearing about this situation for quite a while when we are dealing with building the public works facility, and we've worked through the process of no way, we're not bringing anything forward that costs us more money, to a point where we feel comfortable that we can bring something forward to you that is a good project and that we can afford, and we can actually make it work to our advantage. So again, you're seeing the end result of it, but there's been many, many meetings in here and upstairs where we got to this point. So if you want to see the workings of how the staff works to get to this point, attend some of those meetings and you'll really see how it works. And then we left out, and we probably, now that I look at it, we probably should have had Jarrett give his report tonight, because there's one other thing that I wanted him to address. And last night at the CDA meeting, we awarded our first dollars for the home repair program. Obviously, they don't get the money till they finish the projects, but do you want to just touch on that, Jarrett, and just tell us how that went?
Yeah, so apologize, I don't have the exact number. We had about 15 applications come through in the first batch. We are doing them in batches as kind of staff reviews them against the guidelines that we've created and that were approved by council. We then kind of pick through if something doesn't meet the criteria. You know, we take it back to that individual, let them know just before it gets to CDA, not to waste any any time during the meetings. So we did bring forward 15 qualified applications, which totaled to be about $93,000 worth of funding, and then I believe about $53,000 match. So a total investment of around already $150,000, which is great to see. So those first batches were approved by the CDA. With the applications we have in so far, We have approximately probably estimated about $175,000 committed if we were to approve every single application that we have in right now that is qualified. So obviously that is over our $150,000 cap for this year. So with, I guess, the $150,000 cap, once we reach that point, which again, with the submitted applications that we already have in that are qualified, we have surpassed that. Any applications after that quantity will be pushed to 2023 and will be approved and can be expended during the 2023 expenditure. That we will get another $150,000 to put towards this program. So great to see the amount of interest in this program. We probably will have one more batch come through next month for review, approval, and after that we'll probably hit our cap for this year. But great to see the interest, great to see people are excited for this program, taking advantage of it. And again, great to see, just like the downtown incentive program, to see additional investment going back into our community.
All right, thanks. I really appreciate that update. Anybody else have anything for the good of the meeting tonight? Be looking for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Hagan.
Second.
Second by Dimitri. That we adjourn till our next council meeting on Tuesday, June 7th, 2022. Subject to call. I forgot, I know I'm not supposed to do this under adjournment, but I forgot two things. One, we're still planning on picture day for June 7th. So unless it gets called off, dress the way you want to dress to have your picture on the wall for 100 years. Please. And we'll let you know. And then don't forget the first meeting in July we are not holding that first council meeting in July, which is July 2nd? 5th. July 5th. And I think the plan right now too, Jarek, is that we will not be holding the city planning meeting, which is on July 6th also.
Yes, we're going to certainly try. We're going to see what applications we would need to have, but we can certainly try to accommodate that.
Okay. So with that, we'll have a vote for adjournment. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Again, say no. Motion carried. We're adjourned at 8:39 p.m.